It's Saturday. You know what that means. We'll be live soon. And why not just be live right now? Hey, good morning. Get out of bed. Check the fridge for breakfast. We're serving up soup and meatballs over here. So pull up a chair, relax a little while. Max here, Tim over there. Tim, where were we last week? You were
Well,
supposed to be here, but
I'll,
I'm
I'll
still
leave
here.
I'll leave that for you to tell the story because I only know half. I never got closure on this anecdote.
Well, here it is. So I wake up. I wake up early, and I'm in a dice baseball league. I play this board game with a couple guys up in the New England area, and I play my game. It ends at about 9:10, and I start hearing this noise. And I don't know what that is. Do you know what the smell is when you turn the heat on in your house when it gets cold outside?
Yeah, like
That weird musty smell or whatever. So
yeah.
we start smelling that. And my wife comes downstairs and she starts badgering me. Did I turn the heat on? Because I'm cold most of the time. Like I'm downstairs in the downstairs part of the house and it's colder down here naturally. So hence, I wear sweatshirts during the summer. And she thought I turned the heat on. And last week it was actually pretty nice. And I said, no, I haven't touched anything. And we discovered that something's wrong. And we had to call somebody in to make sure the house wasn't going to explode. So, long story short, too late, but we have a fan that was like rubbing up against some metal. So, taken care of, thankfully.
Good to
So,
hear.
it happened. It had to happen on a Saturday. I mean, and then what was going on? So, like, we just, something couldn't, other things happened. We couldn't get through on Sunday. So, here we are.
Life, man.
And today is going to be our NFL preview day, right? So it's kind of a big deal here on Soup and Meatballs. We're gonna talk NFL almost exclusively. So I try to get our live feed going here, so when people start chatting at us, I can hear them or see them, because this is going to be a pretty popular show. I have a feeling.
Because the nation has been waiting for us to weigh in with
They
bated breath.
have. I've had dozens of people ask me, who do you have in the Super Bowl? So, I mean, let's find out.
Let's do
We're
it.
gonna go slow on this though, because I remember a couple of years ago I did a podcast with my cousin who ran a show called the Big Daddy Sports Show, and he wanted to know, like, he's like, let's talk NFL, and I want records of teams. And I thought to myself, I could just pencil in 16 game schedules back then,
Right.
but I don't know if that's official. So I actually found a website that I sent you. I don't know if you used it. You can click on every game and it'll generate who you think is going to win how many games. Like, it does all the math for you. So it's kind of nice. I can tell you I'm 2-0 right now. I mean,
Me too.
I will give you my numbers based on what I had 2 weeks ago, not taking into account the Jordan Love injury or any of that stuff. So let's start in the AFC, because I think the AFC might be a little faster because both of our teams are in the NFC. I went through and did this. I actually did it twice because I really think I was overly nice to Cincinnati the first time through. Out east, AFC East. Who's your number one?
I'm not sold on the Jets. I don't understand people who think that a team that's built around, a 40-something-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury, there are too many unknowns with that. So I think you'd have to look just at Buffalo and Miami. I like Miami. I know there's some people who aren't sold on Tua, but I think they just have too much on offense. I think they have just enough on defense, and I think that the system they run is interesting and innovative enough that they're going to put up points. I do think Miami wins the division.
Okay. No love for New England at all?
I'm in a confidence pool, and my pick this week, I was like, oh, Cincinnati's beating New England. First year coach who doesn't know who the quarterback is? Yeah. Yeah,
I think that's
New England's like a 3-win team, 4-win team this year.
I had them at 2 when I went through the whole rigmarole. I don't have a lot of faith in the Jets, but I also don't have a lot of faith in the Buffalo Bills. And I think it's unfair to put all of the blame on Stephon Diggs leaving and Josh Allen needing that guy. I'm with you on Miami, but I'm probably a little bit higher on the Jets than I should be. When I was going through game by game, I wanted to give the Jets more losses. I just couldn't. I actually have the Jets and the Dolphins tied at 13-4 somehow.
Wow.
And I'm not good at this. And based on where I have things, it looks like the Jets win the division in my world. But I'm not good at this, so I'm not very confident in what I did. Remember, I told you I did this twice because I didn't. The first time I looked at these records, I'm like, what am I doing?
I think the parity in the East is too great to say that any team is going to be a 13-win team. I think when you have to play 6 games in division and you can only really reasonably count New England as 2 gimmies, I think it's going to be a lot of
I think I had them splitting Miami and Buffalo.
Yeah, I think the East is just going to beat up on itself, and I think we're going to have like a 10-win, 11-win team win that division.
The first time through, I had them 12-5. I don't know where they got the extra win the second time through, but I can dig that. You're going Miami.
I am going Miami.
And, we should write this down so we have like a record of this. So let's do that. Well, you have them. Well, I'll curate them afterwards.
We'll also be able to watch the link back and just write it down after the fact.
Sure, that sounds like a plan. Why not? We'll get another view, right? All right, now let's go. Let's go north. AFC North. This one's tough for me.
Yeah, to my mind, clearly the best division in football, and I know that people aren't sold on Lamar Jackson as a playoff quarterback. That's kind of been the knock on him, but I still think they're the class of a very, very good division. I don't think anything we saw Thursday night in Kansas City changes my mind from that.
Unless their left tackle can't stay on the line of scrimmage for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm glad the NFL addressed that so we could have 5 illegal formation penalties in the first quarter. Just what the fans were clamoring for.
Most of them on third down, too.
Like, I was like John Harbaugh. Like, I was truly, like, cursing at my television. Like, all right. And also...
I didn't know it was a thing this year. For as long as I've been watching football, the left tackle is basically a yard and a half off the line of scrimmage.
Right. And also, for as long as we've been watching football, if one of those tackles steps maybe a half second too soon with his outside foot, it's just understood.
I've seen the false start called on that more than I've seen the illegal formation. But that notwithstanding, that they were in the game with Kansas City right till the end.
Right.
So.
And if you remember last year, I can't remember who the opener was, but like it was like the first 2 weeks of the season, they kept calling false starts.
Detroit?
I can't remember, but they kept calling false starts on tackles for getting an early start on pass protections. And I think by week 5 that the referees are just going to forget about this.
Either that or we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of yards of penalties. So, on my end, now I did this twice, and the reason is I think I was too generous to Cincinnati the first time, and you'll never guess I had Cincinnati and Baltimore tied for the division win. Both of them at 15-2.
Wow!
I thought to myself, I can't have Miami at 15 or I can't have Cincinnati rather at 15-2, and I don't know about Baltimore. I think the first time I went through, I gave Baltimore the opening day win. The second time through, I looked at this and thought, I don't know. It's Kansas City at home. They're going to be raising the banner, and I took Kansas City the second time, and I have Baltimore at 14-3 now, but I have Cincinnati at 12-5. Cincinnati
So
still makes the playoffs, but I don't have them anywhere near Baltimore as close as I did last time.
I think the point I'd made about the East goes even greater for the North, where you're having three outstanding teams and one really good one. Because I think the Steelers are fourth just because of some question marks at quarterback.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't see Pittsburgh going 500 this year.
I don't either, but I think the other three teams go over five. I think you have three playoff teams from the North, and then the Steelers are just unfortunately a very good team that's trapped in a outstanding division.
Yeah, I flip flopped between 7-10 and 6-11 for Pittsburgh. Cleveland, I think I fell back into Cleveland's going to Cleveland this year. I had them at 4-13, and again, there's no rhyme or reason to what I clicked on. Again, I'm not no more an expert on the NFL than I am on polar bears in the tropical jungle. So I just looked at games and I said, "Ooh, I like them. Ooh, I like them." So
I feel like if the Steelers or the Browns played in the NFC South instead of the AFC North,
it would be different.
You'd be talking about like a 13-win team.
I would literally see the NFC South for me. Yeah, it's not pretty.
Yeah, the NFC South is just a pile of soiled diapers. It is just terrible.
It is. The AFC South is. I have them as mediocre across the board. How are you looking down south?
I think the excitement around the Texans is justified. I think you either see quarterbacks who have that breakout season and they either regress or they make the leap. I kind of feel like CJ Stroud is poised to make that leap.
I think the additions of didn't Stephon Diggs go to Houston? Did I read that? I mean they have a semi big three wide receiver core for him. So
right,
if he does regress, it's not because he doesn't have weapons around him.
Right, and not only do I love the coaching staff in Houston, but I love how the player, like the relationship between the players and the coaching staff. Like it really seems like a symbiotic relationship where it's almost like what you saw with the Raiders last year, where the players really wanted to play for Antonio Pierce. And I think you see that in Houston where these players.
I think he gets it because he's a younger coach.
Right. He's not that far removed from
that.
Yeah. So
I'm
think,
with you.
I think Houston's easily the class of the South. And then you have a lot of teams with question marks. I mean, Anthony Richardson missed time, so Indianapolis doesn't really know what they have.
They're another team I wasn't high on.
Trevor Lawrence has been, sometimes great, sometimes less so.
That's
in Jacksonville.
They were mid.
And like
Tennessee is. I don't have Tennessee having a very good year.
Tennessee feels like a team that's going to win like 6 games. They won't be bad enough to get like a great draft pick. And it's going to be a long season, I think, because it's not like a long season where they're going to be like almost enjoyably bad, where you can hate watch them every week. It's going to be like watching some sort of like mid-level movie like You, Me, and Dupree. Like it's on cable, so you just like watch it, but it's not.
There's nothing else on a Sunday afternoon that you don't want to watch the NHL.
Yeah, they're the You, Me, and Dupree of the NFL.
I again, me just clicking. I couldn't find myself picking Tennessee very often against almost anybody. Houston, I had at 13-4. Houston's going to make the playoffs in my world. I have the Jaguars at 11-6, missing out on the playoffs. So I thought Lawrence would have a better year than maybe you will, but again, not a playoff year. And then between the Colts and the Titans, I have 4 wins between them and 3 wins going to the Colts.
I definitely think that's a realistic scenario because the first couple times where you were saying the team's records, and I was like, oh my God, 15 wins. But I think 13 wins is a very reasonable expectation for this Houston team. And you're right. I think Houston and Jacksonville make that division top heavy, and they're going to beat up on the bottom two teams in that division.
The other two,
But
and the rest of the Colts and Titans schedule is not really favorable to them. I don't think.
Yeah, like I agree with you that I think Jacksonville can have double-digit wins and still be, sitting on the couch come playoffs.
In my, let me see how they rank this. The second time around, Cincinnati is my 7 seed, and like I said, they were going to be 12-5. So Jacksonville just misses on my second round. The first time I did it, again, like when I gave the Bengals 15 wins, the Jaguars didn't make the playoffs then either. So, but close enough that, like you had described Tennessee, they're in a funk of they're not bad enough to get a really good draft pick, but they're not good enough to make the postseason, which is a terrible purgatory to be in. And Tennessee has a situation in my head. I don't think Will Levis is going to be the answer quarterback. I think he goes back without a running game. They drafted a tackle out of Alabama, so I mean that'll help him a little bit. But I don't know how they move the ball otherwise. I don't know what kind of weapons they have in what you described as, yes, a top-heavy division.
Like Tennessee's the kind of team where if you're looking at like the Sunday schedule of games and you see that they're your like 4:00 game, you're like, well, what else is on until the primetime game? Like they won't even be fun to watch, I don't think.
Tennessee opens up with the Bears this week, so that will be a fun game for me, hopefully. Side note, Caleb Williams has a chance to do something that hasn't been done in a very, very long time, and that's be a number 1 drafted QB to win in week 1. So,
wow,
here's crossing our fingers for that.
Who's the last one? Do you know that?
I don't, and that's not Mr. Smarty Pants this week, so don't no spoil no tease for later in the show. The meme I saw online just showed loss after loss after loss. I didn't go look up who might have gotten a win. But South, I have the Texans. The West is, I don't know, as much of a slam dunk as possible.
Yeah, but the West is intriguing. So it's Kansas City and everybody else. But everybody else, they have enough questions, but they also have enough in place where like a team like the Chargers with a new coach and a guy like Justin Herbert who, has shown like physically he might be the most talented quarterback in the NFL.
I think I overhyped the Chargers a little just because of Harbaugh.
Herbert might have one of the 5 best throwing arms I've ever seen on an NFL quarterback.
And Harbaugh said the same.
Yeah, he throws a gorgeous ball. And so the Chargers are like they're a perfect metaphor for the teams in the AFC West because they could win 6 games or they could win 11 games. And I think that's true. The Raiders, again, maybe not the Broncos, but
me overrating them in my head because of the Harbaugh connection. I started out, I had them at 12-5, and then the second time around, I don't know where they got the extra win from. I had them at 13-4, and they are the number 6 seed in the playoffs for me.
So. I really think what Harbaugh did for Alex Smith in San Francisco. Because he was kind of, he was the number 1 pick, and then he was kind of wandering in the wilderness where he was good enough to keep his job, but not good enough where fans wanted him to keep his job until Harbaugh got there. And I think we're going to see a huge leap from Herbert this year.
And I think Harbaugh's smart where the Chargers drafted. They went out and got a tackle. He knows games are won up front. I think he wants to win the same way that he won at Michigan with a big running game. I mean, Gus Edwards is 250 pounds or so. Justin Herbert doesn't have. If I look at their depth chart, Joshua Palmer, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston. That's 1, 2, 3 at wide receiver. There's not a name that's going to jump out like Keenan Allen did before he moved on. Joshua Palmer, their number one guy, he's young. He's 24. He's fast like all the other wideouts are, but he doesn't. He's going to have to make a name for himself. We'll put it that way. With Herbert.
I'm curious because obviously we're taking it as a given that Kansas City is winning that division.
Oh yeah, I have them at 15-2, and I can't even imagine. I think I gave them 2 losses because you can't have the 18-0 Patriots again, right?
Right. How do you think things shake out for the Raiders, who I'm very intrigued by, and the Broncos, who I'm less intrigued by?
So I actually like the Broncos quarterback situation better than what. It's the mustache guy. I can't think of his name. Help me out. In Vegas.
Tom Selleck?
Yes, the stranger is the quarterback in Vegas. Minshew. Isn't Gardner Minshew quarterbacking in Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's I had them at 1-16 again. Like every game, it felt like how are they going to win this? How are they going to win this? I have a little bit more faith in Bo Nix with Sean Payton in Denver, but not as much because the second time around I had them going 4-13. Most of the losses coming in division, and then like teams like Houston or teams like Baltimore who play them, I can't see them beating them.
You know, I saw enough from the Raiders, especially on the defensive side of the ball last year, that I think that's a team that can not contend, but
give them 7-8 wins though.
Yeah, like win 6 to 8 games this year. I think they win ugly, but I think they can win 6 or 7 games.
Absolutely, and like I said, I'm no more an expert on this than I am at cleaning the car with Dr. Pepper. I kind of went through and just click who I thought was going to win, and I'm probably, like I said, I'm probably biased a little bit because of Harbaugh, and it was really hard for me to come up with 2 Kansas City losses. Again, this show should have aired last week before the Baltimore game. And I think it was a Kansas City player who made this quote, like, this is the worst we're going to play. And if that's the best you got, you're in trouble. And if that's the worst they play, I don't know if I don't know where those 2 losses are coming from.
There's a real swagger to this Kansas City team. Like I saw Mahomes in his post-game presser, he was told about some comments that who's the Baltimore receiver who barely stepped out?
That guy. He should have been wearing white shoes.
Lively. Yeah, that's what Mahomes said. My advice is wear white cleats next time. Like they've got a little edge to them.
It reminds me a little bit of Mike Hart back in the day talking about little brother.
It almost feels like they've taken on, they say about a team taking on the quarterback's personality. It feels like they've taken on Travis Kelce's personality.
What was that? Where did that look come from? I haven't seen them all preseason. Is that like the new thing? Like the bowl cut with the Bob Gemelli mustache?
I heard a theory that like now that he's, with Taylor Swift, that she was like, you need to get the worst haircut in human history so women know you're off the market.
And a weird thing is I saw this weird video about a document leaked or something that they were going to split up on September 24th or September 28th.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, if anything's going to cause them to break up, it's definitely that haircut.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be talking, I know, but wow.
To get back to the topic of mustaches, like Travis Kelce can rock the mustache. It's a good look on him. Not every man can pull that off.
The mustache is fine. It's the haircut.
The hair. The way I described it to my one friend, I texted him. I said, I can't remember if I said this to you, but I said he looks like a volunteer firefighter who the other guys don't want to get a beer with after work. Yeah,
I could go with that. Off-duty cop who can't find the change in his pocket to park his car, or
like he's some sort of like hapless like volunteer first responder or wannabe law enforcement. That's what that haircut's known as, the wannabe law enforcement.
Wannabe first responder. Yeah, that's bad. But good team, class of the conference. I think we're sure about that. So we'll do playoffs after. All right. So we'll go to the NFC now, and we'll work our way the other way. We'll start out west, where again I think there's a clear number one, but maybe not as clear as the AFC West.
Maybe not as clear as the AFC West, but it's close. The only reason the Niners would not be as huge a favorite is because I think there are still questions about Brock Purdy and how much the Niners may or may not pay him, and how that, will he step up his play to get a big contract? Will the Niners want to give him that contract?
Well, they just
or is
paid
he
Trent
just a
Williams.
system quarterback?
They paid Trent Williams. They paid Brandon Ayuk. So again, weapons on the offensive side, it will not be a problem for him. And along with the running game, between CMC, the versatility that Debo brings. After watching the receiver show, George Kittle might be my new favorite player in the league.
He's a pretty cool dude.
He is, even if he is from Iowa. I said the Niners would be the last undefeated team standing in week 9 after Buffalo beats Miami. So I guess I had Kansas City losing one of their first 8 games. I don't know who the 3 people I have beating San Francisco are, but I have the Niners at 14-3, well above anybody else in that division. I had the Rams at 9-8.
Yeah, yeah. If the Niners stay healthy, that feels like at least a 13-win team, a 14-win team, possibly a 15-win team.
Without looking at their schedule right here, the first time I went through the 15-win Bengal league, I had the Niners at 15-2 as well. So I think I cooled off one game for them, but still have them well ahead of the Rams. The Rams I don't even have making the – oh, I lied. The Rams are a playoff team for me in the NFC. But then the Seahawks and the Cardinals are still working through some things, and they're not the week that the Seahawks play the Cardinals. That's definitely put a movie on Netflix day, I think.
Yeah, that'll now be known as the Yumi and Dupree game.
I don't see that game getting. That game's not getting flexed onto the Peacock network. So
that's like a game where if The Fugitive is on TNT, you're 100% watching The Fugitive.
Yes, absolutely. Or even The Shawshank Redemption for the 47th time. I might even consider Goodfellas with the censorship.
Well, I mean, Goodfellas is my favorite movie, but I digress.
NFC South, the class of the NFC.
Yeah, just a 12-car pileup of a division. Just real dog crap.
We have 2 teams over 500 in that conference or in that division.
Well, you'd have to say that the Falcons are the class of the classless. They're
my
the
number
best of the
one.
worst.
They're my top team. I think that's fair.
And just because I feel like you can reasonably pencil them in for 5 in-division wins, if not 6, I think they can scrounge up another 6 or 7 non-division wins. I could see the Falcons being like a 10 or 11-win team, not a good one.
Ooh. I went one more. I gave them 12. I have them at 12-5.
I could see that too, and I could see them being the worst 12-5 team in history.
Yeah. I mean, the most unheralded. I mean, between their questionable, the weird draft. I mean, they really could have given Cousins a weapon. Odunze was out there when they picked Penix. They could have gone edge rusher to help the defense. I don't understand what they did, but based on the rest of the division, I had them at 12-5, and somebody has to win the South. Somebody has to go to the playoffs from that division, and they are my 4 seed. And I had the Buccaneers at 9-8 because I just did. And then the Saints and the Panthers. Why did I give the Panthers 2 wins? They must be playing the Raiders and the Titans or the Cardinals or something. I don't know where the 2 wins are coming from, honestly.
Yeah, I can't. I believe the record for least wins by like combined wins by a division is 25.
What was the year that the Saints had to this the Seahawks won the division under 500?
And then they beat the
They had a
yeah,
home game against the Saints.
yeah,
Was that the year?
yeah. They went as a 7-9.
7-9, yeah. Because they were under 500 and they got a home game.
Yeah,
Thank you, division winner.
yeah. I just think we could see between Carolina, Tampa, and New Orleans, 3 teams that are going to struggle to have more than 5 wins apiece.
I could
Like,
see that.
so we'll take the 12 wins from Atlanta, and that might be like half of
That's
what
enough,
the victories the division produces.
but it's not enough to break the old record. I don't think. But
Yeah, but I'm interested to see.
um, let's go north. 'Cause for me, the East is really interesting. Out north or up north in the NFC, this again pre Jordan Love injury, and I don't
Yeah.
know how serious it is. So, but before Friday's game, I had a really hard time picking this division. I mean, being a Bears fan didn't help. But who did you have last week taking it?
Detroit. I like what they're doing in Detroit. I think they're going to sustain that success. I was not sold on Jordan Love going into last night. Um, Chicago's at least a year away, and you know, poor Minnesota.
Well, Minnesota really got a Minnesota when McCarthy got hurt,
AJ, yeah.
and yeah, so
And we've
maybe
said
maybe
before,
a red shirt year for him, where I have the Vikings both times at 4-13, where it looks like they're getting the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They could be getting the 6th or 7th draft pick, maybe a lineman for him in the draft next year. So the first time I went through, I had Green Bay winning the division, tied with Detroit 13-4. But I guess whatever tiebreaker the system came up with gave Green Bay the 3 seed. The second time around, I had Detroit going 13-4 yet again, but for some reason I gave Green Bay 12-5. And if I look at my Bears records, I think I had the Bears beating the Packers once because I have the Bears and the Packers both tied at 12-5. The first time I went through, I had them at 11-6, and that actually feels better. Like I can see them winning. I can see them winning anywhere between 9 and 12 games, which after last year's 7 games is still, they're working their way up towards playoff contention. It's going to be really hard, I think, for them to have a rookie quarterback take them to the playoffs.
the
I think that's going to be hard in the NFC North, especially.
the Bears to me feel like what the Lions were 2 years ago when Dan Campbell first got there, and then some excitement started to build in the second half of the season, and it sort of culminated with that Sunday night win in Week 17 when they beat Green Bay, and that seemed to be a great springboard into the offseason, which was a great springboard into mini camp, and then the summer, and then we know what they did in the regular season. I feel like that's the trajectory the Bears are on, where
If
they're going to take some lumps in the first half of the season. Uh, you're going to see a rookie quarterback make some bad reads, bad throws, but he's going to learn, and you're going to see that little leap in the second half where they start to put together some wins. Maybe they beat a team like a Green Bay where you wouldn't think they would.
I would tell you the last game of the season is at Green Bay.
Yeah, and this is assuming a healthy Jordan Love.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see this being in like an 8-win Chicago team that then would have the potential to become like an 11-win playoff contender in 2025.
I agree. They're at least a year away, and if they don't win, I think I'm going to put the number at 10. If they don't win 10 games, I wonder if Eberflus is back. Because in this league, with a guy like Caleb Williams and all of the weapons he has, honestly, he is stepping into the best situation of any number one overall quarterback possibly ever, with three legitimate wideouts, one of them being a rookie, I know, a above average tight end, honestly, an above average offensive line. I know a lot of Bears fans hate on the offensive line. It's not the worst in the league. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. And they have a guy like DeAndre Swift who is a weapon out of the backfield. I think
I loved him in Philadelphia.
You have to give that kind of offense an offensive coach. The defense, when they picked up Montez Sweat, they became a top 5 defense. So, I mean, Eberflus knows his stuff on the defensive side of the ball, but in the NFL, you have to score points. I mean, watching the game last night, I came home from the high school game that my son was playing in the marching band, and I put the game on, and all of a sudden, I turned it on. The score was lower, and then touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. It was just offense after offense.
Right.
You need that in today's game.
And I would hope that the Chicago front office wouldn't be hasty if the Bears don't win 10 games. I think it would be a mistake to get rid of Eberflus, just because I feel like a rookie quarterback needs at least 2 years with the head coach and coordinator intact. I think it is so detrimental for a young quarterback to have that much turnover.
No, absolutely.
I think that's been, and we'll talk a little bit more about Jalen Hurts in a bit, but I think it's impeded his growth a little bit, that they've had some turnover at offensive coordinator. I think you need that one consistent voice in a first-year, second-year quarterback's ear, and a consistency in the style of play and system of play that your offense is putting out on the field.
And I haven't seen a lot of the Bears in the preseason, and I told myself I was going to get that other channel to watch the show, but I didn't. So I hope there's an excitement around the offense that they weren't able to run last year. So
this is the first time in a while I can say that if the Bears were on, I would be excited to watch.
I hope I get to see them, because I'm not going to spend. What did we say last time on? It was like $1,600 or so.
For Sunday ticket, it was like just under $700, I believe.
I'll watch highlights. I guess I'll watch highlights. The last division, and this is where I talked to my dad last night. You'll be surprised who his pick is. I think this division is similar to the NFC North in that it's top 2 heavy.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to be between Philadelphia and Dallas. I've seen people, in my opinion, have too much confidence in Washington.
That's my dad right there.
Because I feel like it's really tough to go all in on a rookie quarterback in week 1. Like, I get why fans of the franchise do it, but as someone who's maybe a little more objective, it's why CJ Stroud was such a story last year, because you just don't see it that often.
I have the Washington team at 10-7, but okay. Yeah, that's I think stretching a little bit, thanks to 2 wins against the Giants and who else they have.
I mean, we can agree the Giants are going to be terrible.
I gave them 2 wins because, again, I think I had to.
Like,
they might play the Cardinals and the Panthers. So,
last night they were showing, because of course last night's game was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and they were showing what other games were going to be played in other countries, and they were talking about toward the end of the year, there's going to be a game in Munich between Carolina and New York, and I'm like, is this like was this part of negotiations after World War II? Okay, we'll end the war, but you have to watch our 2 worst teams play football 80 years from now.
Maybe we can leave them there. Like,
Yeah, like the plane mysteriously runs out of gas or something.
oh no, we 2 buys for the teams you're playing next week. Yeah. What's interesting to me, that the first time I ran my simulation, I it came down to week 17 because I had them both tied, and I had the Eagles winning the East at 14-3. The second time around, it was a little bit different in that both teams were 14-3. So I don't know how the Cowboys got the extra win, but the second time around, it gave the Cowboys the tiebreaker. So I split between Dallas and Philly because, again, before last night, I looked at these two going game by game, and I had a hard time. I think I had them split. They each won their home game because I think that makes sense.
Right.
I don't put a lot of stock into last year and the collapse the last 6 weeks that the Eagles went through, and then the playoffs. You've had an offseason to stew and marinate about that, and I think you have to let that go in the preseason. And their trip notwithstanding last night, again, we would have known this last week. I think this is going to be a different team. I think the defense is going to improve. I think Jalen Carter might possibly be the best defensive lineman in the league now. I mean,
He was fantastic last night. He had his guy on roller skates the whole night. He was getting great pressure.
And that's coming from the interior. If you
Yeah.
blend that with the edge rushers, I have a hard time. I probably had a hard time coming up with the 2 losses that I gave Philadelphia. I don't know if it might have been like a Detroit or a Green Bay or San Francisco. I thought I picked Philly to win last night, though. I think I'm 2-0. I'm calling 2-0 for whatever that is.
Yeah, Philly and Dallas are so closely matched. And, they split last year. I firmly believe, like you do, that they'll probably split this year as well. So you really just have to look at like the little things that might set them apart. And I mean, the addition of Saquon Barkley,
He had himself a
per-
game yesterday.
particularly, and he did it a little bit last night in the passing game, where they had that one little red zone play where they ran the double post to clear the safeties out. And then they got Saquon in a one-on-one where they could throw it and give him a chance to come down with it. I think we're going to see a lot of mismatches with him in the passing game where you're going to have some linebacker trying to run with him. I think that's going to be a huge improvement for the Philadelphia offense. They gave up 29 last night, but I was I was happy with how the defense looked. There's always room for improvement, but I thought they played reasonably well, especially considering how badly they played down the stretch last year.
It's week 1, and the international travel, I don't know if you can quantify like how much of an impact that has, because both teams had to go through it, obviously. But yeah, like you said, the offense is going to be improved this year, and Jalen Hurts, it's really going to be up to him. Can he take a step forward this year?
And I did not see evidence last night that he has. It's early, but he just had his first interception where he threw it over the middle, where there were 4 guys within 8 yards of the ball.
The guy was waving his hand, and I was actually on the phone with my dad at the time, and my dad says, "What are you waving for? You're not open."
Well, his interceptions weren't even his worst throws, because he had the one where they fake a wide receiver screen. They had trips to the short side of the field. They fake a wide receiver screen, and then Devontae Smith just kind of sat by the sideline as like a safety valve option. And the corner just sat there where he was like,
I remember, and was that the one he dropped the interception, right?
Yeah, it would have been a pick 6.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That was an absolute surefire pick 6. As soon as Hurts threw it, I sprang out of my chair because I was sure that it was going the other way. That might have been the worst throw of his career.
Well, I mean, get it out of the way in a win, right? There you go.
I mean, Mr. Silver Lining over here, but
I try my best. That was a bad throw. I
But it's
remember
not
that.
just that. He also looks tentative when he's running the ball still. He doesn't look as fast as he did in the Super Bowl year. He looks a little lost on the RPOs. Like it doesn't look like he knows how to read the ends. It's just it was a little discouraging what I saw from Jalen Hurts last night.
I have the reason. Do you want to know why?
Is it the Twitter feud between Brazil and Elon Musk?
No, no,
Did
no.
that not play a factor?
It's really my fault. Something I did on Wednesday. I didn't mean to. Actually, I did mean to. He was one of my keepers in my fantasy league. Sorry.
Well, at least now we know who to blame.
It's
At the next meeting for all the Eagles fans, I'll tell them who to throw the batteries at.
yeah. Thanks. I'll be in Philly soon. I'm sure. But I mean, I'll make it up, kind of, sorta, almost. So we have our who do you have winning the East? I assume Philly.
Yeah, it's a homer pick. It's maybe wishful thinking.
Listen,
But
I
I
have, I
still
have the
think that,
Bears at 12 wins. You're cool.
but picking the Eagles with the firm knowledge that it just as easily could be Dallas, especially with Dak in a contract year.
So I don't know if you went as in depth. Like after I went through the whole simulation thing, it lets you predict the playoff games that would have lined up. Um, I'll just tell you, because if you don't have it in front of you, it's hard to quantify records. In the wild card round, I had the Bengals losing at the Baltimore Ravens. I had the Chargers losing at the Houston Texans, and I had the Dolphins winning on the road at the Jets. The next round, I had the Dolphins losing at Arrowhead and the Texans losing in Baltimore. And for me, it came down to Baltimore at the Chiefs.
Me too. That's my exact same AFC Championship game. Only I have
And
Baltimore winning this time.
so do I,
Just
because
because it's so hard to three-peat, no one's ever done it.
eventually it has to happen. And yeah, I don't think the pressure to three-peat is going to be anyway. Anyone who believes the NFL conspiracy theories, I think the story is a potential three-peat. So I think the Ravens have to get over that as well. But I think by late in the year, it's cold. The Ravens didn't run Derrick Henry a lot against Kansas City. I don't know if you
And that
noticed that.
surprised me, especially
And
when you consider the element that pairing him with Lamar Jackson gives you. To not take
I
full
think
advantage of that was very surprising.
come January, February, I think that's where Derrick Henry. I think in my head they're saving carries for him. Like, yeah, it'd be nice to win opening day and getting a win, maybe getting the home game in Baltimore. They had a home game in Baltimore last year. It didn't matter. I think that you want a healthy Henry going into that title game, and I think Derrick Henry wins the game for them. So I have the Ravens going to the Super Bowl in the AFC.
That's my exact same logic. Was that I thought that Derrick Henry's built for January football, and that's an element that the Ravens did not have last year.
We are either both really smart, or we're going to be like, people are going to make fun of us.
Both
In
could
the
be.
NFC, oh my, okay, so I lied. The second time around, the Bears actually made the playoffs. They were the 7 seed. The first
So
time
you
they
just
weren't.
kept running the simulation till it told you what you wanted.
Yeah, well, no, I said I ran it twice, and the only reason I did it the second time was I can't give Cincinnati 15 wins. I have the Bears as the 7 seed, and being at 12-5. Yeah, I mean that's just how rough the NFC is. They're losing at Dallas. In the next game, I have the Lions beating the Packers in Detroit. And then the 5-seeded Eagles, because again, my system had the Cowboys winning the East. The Eagles go on the road and they eke out a close one, I guess, against the Falcons. I had the Eagles, Niners.
The Eagles had to eke out one against the Falcons to win the Super Bowl a couple years ago. So
there you go.
But they did it at home that time.
The Lions go to the Cowboys. I have the Cowboys winning that one. I had the Eagles going out to San Francisco, and I had San Francisco winning that. And then we get the old-fashioned 1990s Niners-Cowboys NFC Championship, and I had the Niners going to the Super Bowl.
So I'm back and forth between four teams as NFC Championship caliber: Eagles, Cowboys, Lions, Niners.
They were my final four as well. I think that's the logical final four.
Right, and to me, you could throw those four team names in a hat and pick any two to be your NFC finalists. I would love to see an Eagles Cowboys NFC Championship game. I would love to see a Cowboys Niners Championship game. And any combination of the four would be entertaining. I just the Niners on both sides of the ball have the best roster in football. And again, it's the huge caveat: if they stay healthy.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, again, this is
win the
pre-Jordan
NFC.
Love. We don't know what's going to happen.
Especially if they get the one seed and they get home field through the NFC playoffs. You know, they're not stuck playing like a cold weather game. You know, I just think I think this is a team that goes back to the Super Bowl.
That's sound logic. So almost both of us have the same Super Bowl pick. We have the Ravens in the AFC. I have the Niners in the NFC. You've got a hat pull, which seems to be San Francisco. I had San Francisco winning it all.
I have Baltimore.
But, I mean, that's, again, another. I think San Francisco-Baltimore would be a really good game.
You know, the only thing that gives me pause is, you know, a little bit of the uncertainty on the line, the offensive line for Baltimore. But they showed me just enough Thursday that I think this is a team that can win it all.
There it is. Niners, Ravens, last week, and what should be a pretty entertaining NFL season, I think.
Now watch, the Super Bowl will be Patriots Giants.
No, it won't.
It will not.
We might get. I mean, if you're gonna go weird and wonky, like you can't pick chalk.
That should be the name of the podcast.
Weird and wonky.
Yeah, we should just change the name every week.
Well, it's easy to build up a following doing that. Weird and wonky pick. Like I'll say, you know, in the NFC, if you can't pick one of those four, I mean, shucks, it almost has to be the Falcons or the Bears, because
if Jordan Love's healthy, I take Green Bay if I can't take the top.
Yeah. Four. Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. But then knowing what I know now, in the AFC, I would just randomly pick either Cincinnati or Buffalo. But
yeah,
I don't have any faith in that whatsoever.
I am a big Joe Burrow guy, and I think he comes back from the injury in a big way this year.
And Chase just signed, so Chase is in.
Yeah, if there is a dark horse, I would favor Cincinnati over Buffalo, but I wouldn't discount Miami.
Where's the game being played? That's if it's in Cincinnati versus in Buffalo. Yeah, but either way, I think we're both safe. I don't think we'll get a lot of internet hate for San Francisco, Baltimore, except for, like, you know, you're picking the odds-on favorites. Not like my dad, who went out on a limb and said the Commanders will win the NFC East. So you heard it there. It
was a bold man who picked the Commanders.
It was something. Segueing, another bold man. You know, you brought this up to me a couple weeks ago, and I had heard something about it. Anthony Edwards is one of the best players in the NBA today. I think that's a fair statement to make. He's making some statements of his own. What's going on with him?
So, and first of all, I'll preface this by saying I love Anthony Edwards. I love his style of play. He reminds me of like a 2024 Dominique Wilkins a little bit. But he basically said that Michael Jordan was the only good player in the NBA in the 80s and 90s, and no one else had any talent. And he also started that by saying, like, look, I don't know the history of this.
Excuse me, he what? Trying to cover up my cough. Here. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, he basically said that there were no other talented players, and that's why Kobe Bryant was so revolutionary, because he was the first, like, truly skilled player in NBA history.
Well, I mean,
I can't even say it with a straight face.
So Here's my comparison, because today, working with younger humans, I get to experience part of their psyche. And it's hard for me to tell them back in my day and not feel old and curmudgeon-y, right? I mean, I'm old enough. I don't need that. I can compare this to the hip hop / rap artists that we grew up with. So I would tell them, because they tell me, you should listen to whoever, Lil Baby or Lado or Young Boy or Glorilla or Gunna. Have you ever heard of any of these people? Neither have I.
No.
And if you listen to them, they're all like this auto-tuned junk that in our old ears, just we're not digging on that. And internet hate us all you want. We grew up in an era with Third Base, Public Enemy, Big Daddy Kane, Ice-T, EPMD, Beastie Boys, and
Run
that's
DMC.
the sound we listen to. The differences in just that music is exactly what I thought of when you told me, when I looked up that's what Anthony Edwards said, because people our age can appreciate what Magic and Bird and Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing and Hakeem Olajuwon and Karl Malone brought to the game when the game was played the way it was. And I understand a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo would probably be successful back in the 80s and 90s, and he might be an all-star. He might not be as big as he is now. LeBron could play any time, except, the physicality of the game. He would have to change his style. He couldn't flop as much. You can't tell me that Michael was the only good player in the 80s, though. My old brain won't accept that. It can't.
When I read the comment, it reminded me of it's one of the great punchlines of life that I'm learning in my 40s, that people who are younger than me try to explain to me events that I lived through. I remember having a conversation with one of my sons where he was at that age where kids discover the Beatles and they think they're the first one to discover the Beatles. And so he was like, "Dad, did you know George Harrison was in another band after the Beatles?" And I was like, "Yeah, bud. I was there when the Traveling Wilburys formed. I know the song Handle with Care. Yeah."
I have the cassette.
So I watched these guys. I know how skilled, even guys like Bernard King, who aren't thought of as being the headliners of the 80s, how great a player like Bernard King was. Are players now more athletic? Yes, of course. A guy who's a 12th man on the bench, if you were to pluck him right now, put him in a time machine and take him back to 1986, he might be an all-star because he's just going to be physically more gifted because he has more advantages. But you have generational athletes, whether it's LeBron James, Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, who would be great in any era. If Wilt Chamberlain at 6'11" or 7 feet tall, winning track championships with what we now consider the primitive training methods of the 50s. Could you imagine if he had the diet and weight training and just load management
Yeah,
that
exactly.
players now have?
I hear this argument, this conversation in baseball a lot about Babe Ruth and how he didn't face, the top pitchers and this and this. And then a couple days ago, I saw a stat that Babe Ruth hit something like 385 against Walter Johnson, and Walter Johnson was known to throw in the upper 90s. If you took the beer and the hot dogs out of Babe and gave him, an anaerobic weight training requirement, yeah, but that's the argument that will never be settled, especially with generations where people of our generation are going to look at the big three, the Michael, the Magic, the Larry, and even I put in a lower level just a little bit guys like Barkley and Ewing and Olajuwon, David Robinson, Clyde Drexler back in the day, who was as athletic as anybody. Then even before those guys, like Isaiah Thomas, you said Bernard King, like you can't just come up and quantifiably say, yes, there was no skill back then. Because obviously there has to be some level of skill, right? These people were out there making all-star games, making the all-NBA team.
It's really just so arrogant. It's like waking up and seeing the sun shining and being like, this is the first sunrise in the history of the earth.
And
because I've never seen another sunrise.
It's only shining on me.
Exactly. Like to say that, oh, well, Kobe Bryant was the first great NBA player that I watched, so he must have been the first, is just, it's very self-centered.
And it's also irresponsible because it's not like we don't live in an era where there's not video highlights or video film. You could go back and watch Game 6 of the 1996 NBA Finals, and you could watch it in its entirety. And sure, I mean, there was one game in that series where the Jazz, I think, scored 56 points or something like that for the whole game. But I credit the way Chicago played defense more than anything. That's also the way the game was played.
Those Bulls had 4 lockdown guys in Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, and Harper.
We didn't take 4 steps to jump back and shoot a three-pointer. That style was different.
Yeah, and we've talked before about how each of the like big 3 sports that we discuss, football, baseball, and basketball, are just incredibly different than the game we grew up watching. And that's not a criticism; it's just an observation.
Fact of life. Yeah.
It's not better or worse. It's just different. Like, do I love watching Steph Curry splash? Of course. But would I love to see like a dominant big and like more traditional play? Yeah, like that would be fun for me too.
I don't know. I still like Anthony Edwards. I do. He might be my favorite player in the league, honestly. I mean, I'm with you on Curry. I watch Steph Curry and I'm in awe. I think more than anything about how he revolutionized and changed the 3-point shot, and how it doesn't matter what you do to him, he's always open. And I don't think I can call him one of my favorites, only because I watch him like this all the time. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Edwards, I think, is fun to watch, and I think the Dominique comparison is a pretty good one.
Yeah, there's just a rawness to Edwards' game. And maybe it's because he's young, but he's so explosive, but it doesn't even seem like he's fully harnessed his talent yet.
There's a little bit of that he's in Minnesota. And if you remember episode 1, the reason I started watching Portland because they wear black, Minnesota's got cool-looking uniforms to me and a cool logo. I don't know.
I think the only thing we can really do is have Anthony Edwards on to discuss this with him.
I'll have my producer get in touch with him. We haven't even hit preseason, so we might be able to get him on.
We couldn't even get the Soup and Meatballs people.
Thanks to the house almost exploding, but you know what can you do? But I'll reach out, and that's all we can do here. So Anthony, hit us up if we don't get through to you.
Yeah, if you're
Anthony could participate in our Soup and Meatballs draft, which so we had a guest lined up for this week or last week. So the draft, I prepped for the draft a little differently, and I think it's going to help more now. Staying with the NFL theme, but going a little further down the rabbit hole. Today, here on Soup and Meatballs, Tim and I are going to draft who we consider our all-time greatest defensive players in the NFL. So your criteria is whatever. The only caveat is the player has to play defense primarily. He could play some other stuff, but he's got to be known as a defensive player first and foremost. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I even had 3 cards ready because I was going to take whatever was left. So I will take this card right here.
Okay.
And Tim, for the first pick, we're going to go red or black?
I'm feeling black. I'm feeling the black card this week. Dang it.
It was bound to happen. I think you won the top pick the last 2 times. And now, I mean, I almost don't want the top pick because, well, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. With my number 1 pick, I'm going to take the player who I think revolutionized the form of defense that we see today. Number 56, Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, I think I know he was going to be both of our number 1 picks. The point's been made, obviously the whole premise of the blind side is that, teams started investing in tackles because Lawrence Taylor was just wrecking offenses. And, you look at his career numbers and, this is almost like an Anthony Edwards situation where people who didn't watch him play might look at the numbers and be like, well, he's not the all-time sack leader. He's not the all-time tackles lead. Like, what was so special? It's like, no, you don't understand. He was the baddest man on the planet.
Weren't there.
He was flying high on cocaine and just coming off the edge. Okay.
And I know it means nothing. It means nothing in the scheme of things. But he made the earring cool with the LT earring.
He was smoking crack. He had that little regard for his own body. You think he cared about the quarterback? No, that's a good first. So this is a little bit of retribution for me that I'm taking Dick Butkus.
Oh goodness! Well, you know what? That's
break your heart.
He actually wasn't. He wasn't my number 2 guy either. Amazingly, he was my number 3.
If you're like truly drafting a team, and you want to work from the inside out, you can't do much better than 51.
No. And again, this will go towards the comparison of, football today versus football, many years ago. I don't think what era wouldn't matter with a guy like Butkus. If you look up mean in the dictionary, and what the juxtaposition of, I'm trying to think of what TV show he was on.
He was in like when we were kids, he was like selling grills on infomercials and
but he turned so nice
commercials,
which was so like.
And then like so you hear stories about he bit a referee.
He rips an offensive lineman's arm off and then starts whacking the quarterback with it.
That's a real story though, that he bit a referee apparently. Like in a fumble pile, a referee was trying to clear it out. And Butkus just went chompa chompa chompa.
Don't try to get the ball. Well, with my number 2. Now I think I'm in good shape here, number 2, because I have an outside linebacker, and I'm going to take maybe the best inside linebacker that's left on the board, and one of the scariest humans on the planet. I'm going to take Ray Lewis.
Okay. I've always felt that Ray Lewis got more attention than he maybe deserved. I always thought Ed Reed was the better of the two. Like, I think Ed Reed's a better safety than Lewis was a linebacker. Like, Ed Reed's the best safety I've ever seen. And I say that Brian Dawkins is my favorite player, but Ed Reed is the best safety I've ever seen. But,
no argument there.
But for me to say that I don't think Ray Lewis is as good as Ed Reed was at safety is, not a criticism, because Ray Lewis was still outstanding.
I don't know if there was a player more intense than him, and that's me watching him back in the day. And I went to school out near Pittsburgh, so I saw a lot of Pittsburgh, Baltimore, just gladiator battles between those two teams, and the pre-show stuff, the stuff that I would see on videos now, like just the reappreciation for what he was. Yeah, I don't feel bad about that at all.
I just go back to that play against the Chargers. I forget what year, where the game's on the line and he just goes in and just wrecks LaDainian Tomlinson to seal it. And we're talking LaDainian Tomlinson, like a
Prime,
top 10
prime
running
Lindsay.
back.
Yeah.
Um,
Watch the
so,
video about him. What he misses most about playing now is the eyes of Eddie George and like going up against a big bruising back like Eddie George. He just loved contact.
yeah. Oh, those were great battles. Those Titans Ravens early 2000s. I'm going to go, probably not much of a surprise, but I'm going to go for an edge rusher who can also defend against the run. Give me Reggie White.
Reggie White, yeah, Reggie made my list, and again, I'm making this list thinking that 3 people were drafting, and I didn't expect Reggie to be there when I picked. I had Reggie White at my 6, so but Reggie White could very easily be number 1 overall.
Like Reggie
was
White's
that
one
good.
of those guys where we don't really know how strong he actually was. He wasn't like a guy who wowed at the combine. He wasn't Mike Mamula benching, 225 38 times.
No,
But
he invented the bull rush and just
Reggie White was the guy who, have you ever seen the video where he just one arm just slaps Eric Williams out of the way? Eric Williams of the Cowboys?
Thank you,
And
Deacon
just
Jones.
throws him on the ground like he's a child.
Yeah.
Although I don't advocate throwing children on the ground. I have a
Let's
firm
be
stance
clear.
against throwing children on the ground. But that's Reggie White. He was just unquantifiably strong.
And he wasn't overly big. He's only listed at 290. So
right, and he didn't.
And I don't think he was an edge rusher either, isn't he? Was a D end, but in like a not in what we would consider an edge rusher capacity to be. And when he went to Green Bay, didn't they play a 3-4?
Yeah, like the Gilbert Brown teams.
With Gilbert Brown, like 800-pound dude.
Yeah, he was in a 4-man front with those like birds of prey Eagles defenses where he was like next to Jerome Brown and opposite the end from Clyde Simmons. Yeah, like, and when you say edge rusher, you think of like a speed guy, which Reggie was not a speed guy, but he was fast enough at 290. Yeah, just
around the end, yeah. But he was more of a power guy. I don't think maybe I saw him do a spin move once, but yeah, he would just as soon pick up the tackle and throw him and make the tackle sack the quarterback.
He was a guy who you could occasionally, and they did occasionally slide into the interior, in passing downs or whatever. Just very versatile player. I didn't get to see Deacon Jones. I truly believe Reggie White's the greatest defensive end in NFL history.
And I'm not here to argue that whatsoever. My number 3, I mean, you mentioned him. There's no reason to pass up on the greatest safety of all time. We're going to take Ed Reed. Ed Reed was my number 4 on my big board.
Yeah, Ed Reed was in my top 5, but I didn't think I'd land him. Obviously, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a video NFL Network did where Bill Belichick's talking about a game where Ed Reed basically lined up on the opposite hash of where a play was designed to go and baited Tom Brady into what doesn't seem like a spectacular interception because he's not diving or one-handing it. But when you look at the way he baited the offense to do exactly what he wanted, and then the ground he covered to make it happen, it's unreal. It's safety play at the highest level.
And I think coupled with, I think the fact that he was such a vicious tackler, his coverage skills almost get underrated.
And how dangerous he was with the ball in his hands if he picked it off.
Once he had the ball, I mean, I
agree
with you. I don't have a better safety. I mean, Ronnie Lott was a really good safety. We'll probably hear another safety's name down the line here. I don't know if he was the overall heart of that defense. I lean more towards Ray Lewis than you did. But, I mean, the two of them together, the fact that they're both Miami guys and they both found their way under the same NFL defense, which has been compared to, and again, I'm a Bears fan, so I'm going to lean one way, but the 2000 Ravens and the 85 Bears were if you were ever in a street fight and you needed somebody to defend you, those are the two defenses I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and they did it in such different ways because the Bears were so blitz heavy and they were just trying to overwhelm your quarterback, just throwing bodies at him. Whereas the Ravens did it more straight up. They had, guys like Siragusa,
They had scheme.
yeah, they were clogging the line, freeing the linebackers, and then trusting their secondary to clean up any messes.
And then those Ravens team had Jamal Lewis running the ball for 2,000 yards. I'm amazed I wasn't a Ravens fan back then. Like that was just good football.
You know what turned me off of them was I didn't like Brian Billick.
I can see that. I can see that.
He just grated on me. I'm also going secondary with my third pick, but I think I need a little flash. A little glitz, maybe a little prime time. Give me Deion Sanders.
Best cover corner ever. And
absolutely. And, I know people like to talk about his, maybe questionable tackling skills. But
maybe.
His cover skills are so great that I will overlook that. I've never, people, of a different generation will talk about, Darrelle Revis or Ty Law or whoever. I've never since being old enough to appreciate football on a deeper level, I've never seen a better cover corner than Deion Sanders.
And I don't think we will. He took half of a field away in the National Football League, and his flair for the dramatic when he had the ball in his hand,
even more dangerous than Reed.
He could somehow gain 5 yards on an interception, but run around for 6 minutes. And it was wild to watch.
Yeah. And he got a lot of hate for it at the time because people thought, he was all about himself and the diamond-studded earrings. But the man was entertaining. He put on a show.
And you can ask Tim McCarver, Deion was must-watch TV. Absolutely.
I mean, as a Yankees fan, you might remember that there was, like in the late 80s or early 90s, a game where Deion was on the Yankees. Kansas City comes to Yankee Stadium with Bo Jackson. Bo hits 3 home runs, but all anyone talked about was Deion Sanders hitting an inside the parker that was one of the most exciting inside the park home runs you will ever see. Like, if you haven't seen it and you're watching this, look it up on YouTube.
I'm going to go look
from the moment the ball leaves the bat.
And the first NFL, MLB player to play in a World Series game and play in an NFL game. And you know what? If you've ever seen any of his coaching at Colorado, he seems to care about kids, and he seems to be coaching the right way for the right reasons. So I like me some Deion. I do. And now for my 4, now I've got, like, if I'm trying to build a defense, this is where I'm kind of lost, because the next 3 guys on my list, again, not expecting to have this kind of situation, and in
you better not take my guy. I've got my guy in mind too.
Well, see, I think I know who your guy is, and I don't want to take your guy. I don't want to do that, and I want to get, I'm gonna be weird. I'm gonna go down to where I had my number 11, actually, because this is the 4th round pick, and it would have been maybe 12, and I'm gonna take somebody to go on the other end of Lawrence Taylor, who, I mean, if you try to double team Lawrence Taylor, I think Derek Thomas might kill your quarterback. I'm gonna take Derek Thomas.
Wow.
Again, I had him at 11. That I had other guys ahead of him. I don't want to take a defensive lineman. I don't need a safety, and I don't want him. So I'm going to take DT. I have DT and LT. We're going to sell T-shirts.
You know who Derek Thomas feels like the football equivalent of the previously mentioned Dominique Wilkins, where he's a guy that I don't think fans now truly appreciate how great he was.
How
Because he
fast
never
off the
was a
edge he
guy who
was.
got the big stage of a Super Bowl, just like Dominique never really, went to an NBA Finals. He never got that stage to show off just how dominant he was.
I
But
remember the Sports Illustrated used to put out these VHS tapes every year, and they on one of those tapes they did a little package on him coming off the edge was almost as not as scary as LT, but it was reminiscent.
do you remember that we would have been in like 7th or 8th grade during the winter, and we
Seven
built like
sack game.
what's that?
I remember the 7 sack game.
Well, no, this is so we were in my backyard. We built a snowman for the sole purpose of pretending to be Derek Thomas and deliver blindside hits and watch the snowman's head come off.
You know what? That sounds like something we would do. I don't remember it specifically, but sure, yeah.
I 100% remember this, that we just kept taking running starts from the gutters of my parents' house and just destroying this poor snowman like it was, Bernie Kosar.
He's not gonna. I don't think he's not gonna make my list. But if he makes your list, I'm sorry for spoiling it. But we lined up that snowman like he was a trophy, and like what we call trophy, we call quarterbacks.
Pat Swilling, was that Pat Swilling who said that?
That was
Or
Pat
Ricky
Swilling,
Jackson?
one of the 4 great Saints linebackers of the early '90s. That was Pat Swilling. So he makes your list. I'm sorry, he didn't make my top 15.
No, he did not make mine either, although he was fantastic. I want to kind of build up my interior a little bit. I'm going to go with a Pennsylvania guy. Give me Aaron Donald.
Okay. I didn't
guy,
put Aaron Donald on the list because I just didn't. He's among the best defensive linemen of all time. I accept that.
I feel like him, Mean Joe Green, and Bob Lilly are probably the 3 best defensive tackles, and I would say Donald. I didn't watch the other 2, so I'm biased. But I would say Donald was the best of the 3, with like Warren Sapp and Cortez Kennedy, kind of coming in behind those guys. But Aaron Donald, great against the run, and then obviously just a demon when it came to pressuring the quarterback.
Almost unblockable when it came to trying to pass block him.
And did you see? It wasn't. It was just a couple of days ago. He had a foot race with LaShawn McCoy and beat him.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he beat Shady McCoy.
McCoy's taking some shots to his legs. I guess he's that's impressive, honestly.
Wow. Yeah, because what's Aaron Donald, like 275, 280 now? Like that he's not playing?
He played big, so I don't know if he cut weight, but a defensive tackle shouldn't be outrunning an NFL
like a
running
10,000-yard career rusher.
Wow. Okay, so with the 5th pick, and this is where having I had 16 guys that I could pick from, and I have 2 outside linebackers, I have an inside linebacker and a safety. So I almost feel I need a defensive lineman, and I'm not going to take the highest defensive lineman on my list. I'm not going to take the second highest defensive lineman on my list. I'm going to take maybe the most entertaining defensive lineman on my list. I'm going to take John Randall.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's like one of those NFL Films all-stars where, anytime he was mic'd up, you knew you're getting grade A content. But aside from all that, just a beast on the interior.
Yeah, I'm drafting him partially for the entertainment value, but he was a heck of a player on top of it.
Yeah, and you talk about the intimidation with the face paint and just all the trash talk, but he backed it up. He's like the defensive line equivalent of Deion Sanders.
The John Randall spin move at defensive tackle. So I have to look this up. John Randall played at 290, but he was 6'1". So he was one of the shorter defensive linemen. Like Reggie White was like 6'5". I don't know how big Aaron Donald is, but like 7-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro. This guy, he put the numbers behind the weird and wonkiness. But for me, the weird and wonkiness doesn't hurt.
I still can't believe those 98
like
Vikings didn't win at all. They were so stacked.
Sure.
I was sure that Cunningham was going to get a ring, but it wasn't meant to be. So I'm of two minds with my last pick. I almost went with Bruce Smith to give me the best bookend ends.
Bruce Smith,
football.
I had rated 8 on my
Okay.
big board. So he's undrafted as an 8 for me. I drafted 11 and 12 just because I'm dumb.
But I do feel like I want to go secondary again. And it's the previously mentioned Ronnie Lott.
Ronnie Lott was my number 7.
10 fingers or 9 fingers. However many fingers, he can be in my secondary.
Ronnie Lott, I had 7. So, yeah, there's no argument that I won't talk down on you because that's a great pick, especially at 10 right now.
Yeah, in my heart, I wanted to take Brian Dawkins, but Ronnie Lott.
That's what I thought you were going to take. And I actually had Dawkins on my list. But I thought, you know what? I already have Ed Reed. I don't need another safety.
Yeah, I just felt like and Ronnie Lott was almost like a linebacker playing in the secondary with the way he hit and the way he could come up and run support. I don't have him quite at the level of Ed Reed, but it's like Ronnie Lott was the best safety I'd seen until Ed Reed. Like Ed Reed was doing things where I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know a safety could do that. But like
I didn't know they could do.
Like 15 years before Ed Reed, Ronnie Lott was doing that. It was like, oh, damn, a player can do that? Okay. So, yeah, give me Ronnie Lott.
So,
there it is. Corner earlier in his career. So, depending on what era Ronnie Lott, you got a guy who can run with some receivers.
His coverage skills underrated, too. Again, because he was known as a hitter.
Yeah.
So, assuming we had another human drafting, who are some of your honorable mentions? Because I think we have to name some of the guys we prepped for. I think.
So some of the other Bruce Smith was on my list.
Bruce Smith made my list.
Bob Lillian, Mean Joe Green were on my list.
Okay.
Dawkins. I kept trying to think of other speed linebackers, like off the edge, like a Derek Thomas or Lawrence Taylor. But there wasn't one that really came up that I wanted in my top 5. So yeah, I more went with defensive line, or one other one was Dick Night Train Lane.
Night Train Lane. Yeah, so I didn't know how old you were going to go. So, I mean, I think the oldest for me, beyond Dick Butkus, I had Jack Ham and Deacon Jones on my list. Darrelle Revis made my list over Dion, I think primarily because the tackling aspect. As far as just characters go, Charles Woodson made my list because, again, he was ranked 15th, but my 14th. It was split between 2 of the scariest people. Like if you're walking down the street at night and you saw these 2, even if they were in a full football uniform, so the 2 scariest human beings I think on this planet both played outside linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. One of them was Greg Lloyd, who will be scary forever. And the other one, if you've ever seen the man work out, James Harrison is a beast.
I don't know how old James Harrison is now, but he looks like he could still put pads on and make an impact.
James Harrison was born 5 days before I was, so he's 46.
Oh my God!
And just go watch some of his workout stuff because
I've seen some of them.
It's frightening, and he's athletic. He scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. What 96 yards?
92?
102 or whatever it was. Yeah. Like totally broke Arizona's heart. But if he hit me, I think it would take all the King's horses and all the King's men to try to put me back together again. Because and Greg Lloyd, again, when you're talking about speed rushers, he would have been one of the guys that comes to mind. In the early 90s, Pittsburgh wasn't all that good. That was largely Bubby Brister and that era of Pittsburgh, but he was still
Barry's Banana Foster.
Greg Lloyd off the edge with a really thick plastic face mask. Just so there we go. There's the Soup and Meatballs draft of the day, and
I think we did a good job. I think we got a good core foundation for our defenses.
Most people appreciated your wrestling draft more than mine, so we'll see what the people think of our defensive draft and get people talking about that. The other thing that we like to do here on Soup and Meatballs, we like to award our top 5, and this is where things can mesh up a little bit. Like I took LT and you couldn't, and now we're gonna rank what we consider to be the top overall nicknames in football.
I'm traveling because I wrote this down. I have to find it.
That's okay.
My house is just a collection of hastily written notes.
My studio, I have everything here in front of me. My producer's in my ear telling me what's coming up next on the segment. They're telling me, hurry up, we have to get to commercial. We don't have commercials yet. If you would like to sponsor Soup and Meatballs, reach out. Our email is scrolling down below. We'll certainly shout out your business.
I can't find my list.
Oh my goodness, no. Well, you're going in blind then.
Yeah, I'm flying blind. Let's do this.
Okay. You want to go 5 to 1 or 1 to 5? Because this is another one where my number 5, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 different choices I could pick from because I really had a hard time with this, narrowing it down.
My number 5, I'm going to pick, and it's sort of the theme for today, another guy that maybe fans overlook from the 90s. But one of the most fun running backs to watch. A guy who was huge but had track speed. I love me some Christian Okoye, the Nigerian Nightmare.
Nice. I thought you were going to pick one of mine.
We can double up.
I didn't. That's cool if we get 10 unique. I don't think we will. He didn't make my list, and that's really unfortunate because I watch a lot of Tecmo Super Bowl on TikTok. Like there are guys that get like old school retro machines and they play. And yeah, Bo Jackson was overpowered, but Christian Okoye on that game just bowling through people, just like he did in real life. Yeah, that Nigerian Nightmare. That's awesome. I'll tell you what. I will go. I will let that dictate my number 5 out of these 6, which I'll tell you here afterwards. I will take another running back in that era who I actually wore his number in 9th grade because I wanted to be Craig Ironhead Hayward.
That's a good one.
Ironhead. That's where I thought you were going. I'm like, oh no. Two big backs in our backfield to start.
I thought you were going to go with Raymond Harris, the ultra back.
I don't know if that was his actual nickname or if that was a Berman nickname. I'm not going with Berman nicknames.
No.
And if I was, he'd be 1. I loved Raymond Harris.
So my next one, and I'm trying to remember my list. I remember 3 of them off the top of my head. But one that I don't normally like modern sports nicknames. And I know I've said before, they just feel calculated. Mm-hmm. Like it feels like, this is what I'm going to name my sneaker line, But
and I got the logo all prepped too.
I love this nickname because it applies so well. And it was not self-applied. I'm going with Calvin Johnson as Megatron.
Oh, cool. I love that. Good. Because Megatron was in contention for my number 5.
I just love that like a teammate saw him as a rookie. Roy Williams saw him and was like, oh, this guy's not a human being. This guy's like a whole other species.
He is a robot that is going to turn into a blaster who will just destroy defensive secondaries. So Megatron made he was in the running for the number 5 spot, and for the same reason, just because it sounds cool. That's probably of all the ones that I picked, that is easily the most recent. So
Okay.
I'm Megatron number 4. I dig that. So my number 4 was someone who made your drafting team. I'm going to go with Primetime.
Okay.
Primetime Deion Sanders.
I remember that Primetime was not on my list, but was in mind when I was making my. I swear I made a list.
I
But
did
no,
my prep work. It was 2 weeks ago though.
Primetime is, it falls into that category of a self-applied nickname. But Deion Sanders he's just in his own category as a personality. He's just like a hype machine slash force of nature. Primetime just
And it
feels
was
right.
he was prime time at the NFL Combine when he walked in, ran a 4.2, and then left. That's just, to me, screams somebody who would call themselves prime time. Yeah.
So this was my number 1 pick for nicknames, by the way, but I'm going to mention it as 3 because I'm forgetting the other 2 off the top of my head. But the previously mentioned Dick Night Train Lane.
Night
Like
Train is
Night Train it's like a very evocative nickname for a defensive back. It's just something you don't see coming that just flattens you. Like it also feels like a nickname from a bygone era where like sports writers or radio guys were like looking for nicknames to try to give readers or listeners an idea of like these players and their style of play.
it feels almost like, I like how you like the radio, the old timiness. Like when you think of weird nicknames, baseball players back in the old days, or Cracker Jack or Rubber Duck, Night Train had an NFL feel to it because it almost felt there's an ominousity to it.
And just the combination of speed and power. Just easily my number 1 football nickname. I've loved it ever since I learned who Dick Lane was.
He was, again, he made my list, but he made it number 5. So, and that was another number 5 off my list. My number 3, another guy who you drafted, just a really cool nickname for what he was both on and off the field, Reggie White as the Minister of Defense.
Yeah. That was maybe my number 6. It was a tough cut just because I have a lot of fondness for Reggie White. And absolutely. A guy who's an ordained minister who also is a wrecker of human bodies. It's such a great nickname.
Now you're on the spot. Now you got to come up with one.
So I don't think this was on my original list, but it should have been. So maybe it's a good thing I lost the list. This is going to be an obscure one as well, but I just love it. It was former Philadelphia Eagle Izell Jenkins, who was so bad he's just known as Toast. I've met fans who don't even. They're like, wait, his name is Izell? Like that's his Christian name? Everyone's just like, no, my man's so bad, we're calling him Toast.
That's I haven't heard that, and that's awesome. I love that. Wow, Toast. So I mean, on my number 2 is also a Philadelphia Eagle, but I mean, it is a really, really cool nickname, and it's a guy neither one of us drafted, and I almost drafted him. Brian Dawkins is Weapon X.
Yes, that is very cool, and because like I'm into the Marvel stuff. Marvel made a special like comic book illustration of Weapon X and Wolverine like running out of the tunnel.
Cool.
Yeah, it's super cool.
So yeah, Weapon X, and when you think of how versatile Dawkins was, that really fits.
I'm gonna take one more look for my list. Let's hear your number 1, and if you
So my number 1 is partially homerific because it's a bear, but the way he ran, the way he played, Walter Payton was simply sweetness.
Oh, that's a good one. And sweetness didn't come to mind immediately, but as soon as you say it, it's like one of those ones that seems obvious. So I found my list for top 5 fictional managers and coaches from a couple of weeks back. That's not particularly helpful. Once you said Primetime, I kind of felt like that would have been on my list if I'd thought of it, but I'm going to go with a simpler one. And I'm going to go with Mean Joe Green.
Mean Joe. Yeah, that was
just It's
That didn't make the 5, but yeah, absolutely.
like sometimes like just like the simplicity of a nickname is the beauty, you know? And so I don't think he was on my original list, but I'm perfectly content to have Mean Joe Green in my top 5.
I'm again, yeah, no problems there. The other 5s that I had a really hard time picking between: Megatron, Night Train, Ironhead, who I eventually took, but two Bears again, and it's just part of being a fan. William the Refrigerator Perry.
Oh, that was in my top. Refrigerator is in my top 5.
That made your top 5. Okay, so I reminded you there, and Samurai Mike.
Oh, that's a good one.
It was cool, but it wasn't as cool as Prime Time or Weapon X or things like that. And the other one that I had was, just harkening back to my fullback days, Moose.
You know, in that same vein of someone I considered, and this is going way, way back in the Wayback Machine, Bronco Nagurski.
Okay, yeah.
I considered Bronco Nagurski because Bronco's just a great nickname, or Red Grange, the Galloping Ghost, which is
Galloping Ghost.
along the same lines as Night Train.
And that harkens back to the old time days where, you're right, where the print media would paint, a visual narrative and give it that flair to it. So good lists, I think, this week. And so it's unfortunate that we only got 2 sets of lists, but
Well, we'll get Anthony Edwards on, and he'll do the next top 5.
That works. That works.
We'll make him list best NBA players pre-1990. That'll be the next top 5 with Anthony Edwards.
Okay, I wonder if he'll come up with 5. So,
when did Kobe get drafted?
I wonder if he'll understand the anecdote that Kobe Bryant fears Terry Kringy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And only a handful of people are going to understand that before they start looking it up. Kringe is Kringe, by the way, if you're looking it up. And thank you for that.
Hazelton Area Pride.
There it is. So this week on Mr. Smarty Pants, we had a question sent in that I'm gonna put on hold, actually, because another listener sent us a question that was inspired by our Florida State discussion from 2 weeks ago. And it also fits in with, what we were talking about here today. So question-wise, there's a question and a list. Question-wise, who has more career interceptions at Florida State? Is it Deion Sanders or Lee Corso?
Just the nature of the question leads me to believe the answer must be Lee Corso.
You lock that in?
Yeah.
You're locking in Lee Corso.
Sure.
Sorry, you were wrong.
Oh, well.
It is not Lee Corso. It's a tie. It's a trick question. They each have 14. Lee Corso was a Seminoles defender from 1953 to 1956, picked off 14 passes. Deion Sanders had 14 picks from 1985 to 1988. The all-time leader is neither. It's Terrell Buckley with 21. Yeah. 21 interceptions.
He was, and then I remember he ended up getting drafted by the Jets and kind of having not quite the career Deion had, but not a bad corner. He was a serviceable corner.
He would make our draft list if we had 100 people drafting, maybe. But
I don't know if he'd make my top 5 guys named Terrell.
Oh my goodness!
Davis and Owens right away.
That's the future show. If you at home watching, or in the car, or on the plane, wherever you are, if you have a question for Mr. Smarty Pants, you'd like to see him try to answer it, send us an email or hit us up on Facebook. I'm working on an Instagram connection, but I'm not there yet. Email is the easiest way to go, so that Mr. Smarty Pants doesn't see the question ahead of time.
Yes.
Which is really where the interesting part is now, because the list I think is interesting. I think I got 7 when I put this together out of a total of 50.
Okay.
So we started college football already, and in a couple minutes, Michigan and Texas are kicking off. So big games all around. So I thought to myself, we can talk about the Heisman Trophy. It's the college football's top player, but most of the time it's a quarterback. Sometimes it's not. So, Mr. Smarty Pants, how many non-quarterback Heisman Trophy winners can you name out of the 50 that are on the list?
50 non-quarterback Heisman winners?
50, 5-0.
Jay Berwanger, who won the first Heisman, was a running back.
Jay Berwanger at the University of Chicago. Boom. That is an X. I didn't get that one.
Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith is the most recent. He's a wide receiver.
Tim Brown.
And you're going all over the place now. Tim Brown is a check.
Desmond Howard.
Desmond Howard is a check. Yep.
Charles Woodson.
Charles Woodson was the first one I thought of. So, yep, Charles Woodson.
Eddie George, Rashawn Salam.
Eddie George, Rashawn Salam. You've got 4, 5, 6, 7. You got a lot. You tied me, so you're going to beat me by a ton.
Archie Griffin.
Archie Griffin, I'm only going to give you once.
Yes.
Because he did win twice.
Paul Hornung.
Paul Hornung is going to be down on the list a little bit. Now you're going to make me look. No, he did not make the list.
Marcus Allen.
Marcus Allen, yep, he made the list.
Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson, yep. He just missed the one in between them.
Let's see. Herschel won in 80. Oh, Mark Ingram from Alabama.
Mark Ingram, yep.
Okay. How many do I have now?
1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You got 13.
Okay.
I'm hoping you get 20. That's the. Oh, you got 12 because I only counted. I gave you 2 X's, but Archie Griffin only counts once.
Oh, OJ.
Yep, there you go. There's 13.
John Cappelletti from Penn
Cappelletti,
State.
Yep, he's on the list. So it's at 14.
Did Derrick Henry win one?
Derrick Henry is not on the list. Oh, Derrick Henry won in 2015. He is number 15.
I couldn't remember if he did or not. Okay.
When in doubt, guess an Alabama running back.
Let's see. Now I'm getting down to it.
So again, folks, he had no idea this was coming. So 15 off the top. That's impressive.
What about Mr. Inside and Mr. Outside? I'll go with Doc Blanchard and Glenn Davis. Was it Glenn Davis? I know it's Doc Blanchard. They played for Army in the 40s.
Doc Blanchard in 1945. He's number 16. Who was the other guy?
Glenn. I want to say his last name was Davis.
I'll give you Glenn Davis. Glenn Davis is number 17. He won the following year for Army.
Okay.
So you got 45 and 46.
Okay.
Gotta get 1940.
Oh, man. Charles White?
Charles White.
From
That's
USC?
a name that I remember writing down back in 1979. He's number 18 for you.
Okay. I've got to dig deep if I'm going to get 2 more. No.
When I put the list together, I mean, some of these guys I'd never heard of, but I'm not Mr. Smarty Pants.
Oh gosh, Adrian Peterson never. No, that's not a guess because he didn't win one. Heupel and Jason White won him during Oklahoma's run. Tony Dorsett.
Tony Dorsett's on the list. 1976.
Ricky Williams, Ron Dane, Earl Campbell.
There you go. So hold on, Ricky Williams, is 20. Ron Dane is 21. Earl Campbell is 22.
I think that's reasonably how many I'll
You're
get.
you're close to closing out the 2000s. There's one more guy from the 2000s era. There was 4 Heisman Trophy winners from 2000 to today. 3 running backs and a wide receiver. You got 2 of the running backs, so you're missing 1. And I don't think he had to give it back. Maybe he gave it back and they gave it back to him.
Reggie Bush just got his Heisman back.
Reggie Bush is 23. So now you've got all the recent ones out.
Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders is 23 for you. When you said Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson sandwiched another running back in the middle from 1983, who was probably playing in the Big 12 at the time. Maybe it was the Big 8.
Mike Rozier?
Mike Rozier is 24. Now we have to go back to 1980, and I don't know of a good clue to give you for this guy. He was a running back for South Carolina.
George Rogers?
George Rogers, there you go. He's 25. Oh my goodness. What can I say about this guy without just flat out telling you?
You sound like you're giving a eulogy. What can we say about Dave Wanger that hasn't already been said? He was the first number 1 draft pick in NFL draft history, too, by the Eagles.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe the Bears. No, the Eagles.
This guy was nicknamed Kung Fu by Chris Berman because instead of getting tackled, he ran at and jumped fully airborne, kicked a Houston Oiler cornerback in the head. 1978 from Oklahoma.
I don't think I know it.
Billy Sims.
Oh, Billy Sims.
I wouldn't have got him.
I kept going back to Marcus Dupree, like the greatest that never was, when I was thinking of running backs from that time.
Then going back, I mean, now we're going back into the 70s. Some of the names, at least, that I recognized putting the list together. I recognized Johnny Rodgers. I recognized Ernie Davis. I recognized Alan Amici. And one of the names that I thought you might have got, but you didn't, was Tom Harmon.
Oh. Yeah. What I was doing, I was going alphabetically. I was doing the states alphabetically and then like trying to really quick. But then like it would jog like other players of that era. Like that's how like Dane and Ricky Williams, and then Williams being a Texas guy, brought up Earl Campbell.
Dane was one of the ones I forget the 7 I got. After Howard and Woodson, they were the first 2.
Did you get Rashawn Salam at least?
No. It was just sad because I remember he was a Bear.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering.
And when I put the list together, I'm like, kind of like how you feel sometimes with some of the names, like, oh yeah, I remember this guy. Oh, and he was at Colorado. I don't know if he was at the Hail Mary game or if he had graduated by then. Was he there for that?
Yeah, that was 94 was the Hail Mary game, and then Salam might have won in 95.
94 was his win. Okay. Eddie George was 95
because that's when they had the triplets. It was Michael Westbrook was the wide receiver who ended up in Washington, and Cordell Stewart was the quarterback, obviously, and went to the Steelers.
I had arguments with Steeler fans. They thought Cordell Stewart was the greatest quarterback of all time, and
well, I think history has proven them to be true.
I think if we drafted our all-time quarterbacks named Cordell, he might not make the list.
Well, not the top 5, but maybe 6 through 10.
Maybe 6 through 10, I guess. I'm at a loss for that, but yeah, that's a good showing this week for Mr. Smarty Pants. The other thing about the other thing about Heisman Trophy winners, a lot of times are seniors, but more recently you see non-seniors. Out of all of the Heisman Trophy winners, do you have any idea the number of non-seniors to win the award? You don't have to give the names, just like a number of how many non-seniors you feel have won the Heisman.
16.
27. And a lot of them coming, so
like Manziel, Tebow.
In our era, we'll say from like Herschel Walker on. It was Billy Sims was 78, but Walker, Barry Sanders, Andre Ware, Ty Detmer, Desmond Howard, Woodson, Leinart, Bush, Tebow, Bradford, Ingram, Cam Newton, RG3, Manziel is a freshman. Then Jameis Winston is a freshman. Mariota, Henry, Lamar Jackson is a sophomore. Kyler Murray, Bryce Young is a sophomore, and then Caleb Williams as a sophomore. But 27 in total.
Did you say Archie Griffin?
Archie Griffin would have been 74. So we neither of us were alive for that one.
Okay.
That's why I
said
said
doing in our lifetime. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, then you go Roger Staubach, Janowitz, Walker, and Blanchard were the others.
Okay.
But yeah, there it is. Things you just don't think of. But well, it's almost that time.
4 minutes to kickoff.
College, yeah. This is a good pre-show. Texas at Michigan.
I don't like
it. Who
do
you got?
I think Texas wins, and I think they win by 2 touchdowns, maybe more.
It depends on if Michigan really put the vanilla offense last week. Because let's be honest, Fresno State is not a bad team. They might not be a big name, but they are in contention to win the Mountain West. They are a very good team. But Texas is Texas. And, the only thing Michigan, I think, has going for them, A, it's at home, and B, they have a really good defense. I think it's a low-scoring affair. I think it comes down to if Davis Warren doesn't turn the ball over, I think Michigan has a chance. They have to run the ball better, though. They have to hold the ball. I'm with you. I think Texas wins, but I have Texas by 6.
And this isn't like any sort of like X's and O's thing for me, but it just feels like the national narrative is waiting for a game where Michigan gets thumped by another power program, just so everyone can be like, oh, the cheaters got theirs. I kind of feel like that's what's coming.
That's what's coming, but I maybe that's why I hope they keep it close.
Right, that would take the sting out of it, obviously, but I have a bad feeling.
We'll see, but either way, Tim, it was a good week. Thanks for hopping on, and you guys at home, thank you for joining us, and you enjoy the games today, tomorrow, and all next week. And Tim and I will be back here for more soup and more meatballs, and maybe we'll have a guest. We'll see where we're at, right?
I'm making soup tomorrow. The pasta fazool recipe I sent you.
Nice. We'll have a bowl, and everybody will see you together, and go blue.